your ball season going or is it over?
It's over. Had a last tournament. We went to Fargo this weekend. We went 10-0, all 3 games, and won the tournament. So that was worth it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, now we're on to start football practice Wednesday night and golf next week.
What, Wednesday night?
Flag football.
Oh, okay.
Already.
That's already?
Yep.
Jesus.
Yep. Very, very little break.
Your boy golfs?
My oldest boy does, yeah. The youngest one plays flag.
Gabe is not your oldest then?
No, Daniel is.
Oh, I didn't know there was another one.
Yep, yeah, he'll be
The only one I ever saw was Gabe.
Yep. Yeah, the other one will be-
Gabriel, I guess his name is.
Yeah.
Your wife told me.
Yep, and Daniel will be 14 pretty soon.
Oh.
Hey, Butch. How you doing, bud? Yeah. Come here.
Is that anything that'll eventually get worked out? Because I don't know. I just got a call from the daycare. I don't know if I can be here. And I knew you had mentioned before that. Is there, in the end, is there?
You doing, Bill?
Maybe.
Good, how about
Maybe
you?
they have about half the amount of parking that they need. So that's the
Other than
issue.
the
And
lack
then we're
of
working with
rain.
DGR and their engineer. Had another phone call today on drainage issues. I mean, all
I had
parking
coffee
lot.
with the farmers and they don't like it, but I said I don't have to mow, so
Right?
Yep.
they don't like
We had
that
the
either.
trees
but-
taken down. I couldn't talk to Quinn.
A little bit yesterday, they didn't do much, but
Yeah. Would you get 30? I
got
Yeah.
Oh, 180. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
No, my husband
Right.
planted the garden and then didn't dump it out, so
Yeah,
I wasn't sure exactly what we got.
yeah, I didn't even, they make the
yeah. No,
dirt
yeah.
wet and I wiped the flower bed and the,
Oh, Jesus.
on the balcony,
Oh,
you know?
Yeah.
Not
You
enough to
don't,
make,
you don't need to be here then.
right,
You can
right.
call me later if you need to.
but
Yeah. No, just, you go home and get better. Hey, Todd,
What-
can
what are you
grab one more?
doing?
Yeah, I can grab one here.
you should have stayed.
Oh, you're not, just got out of the hospital?
Still looking good for you though? You hope? Yeah. The pond down there ain't gonna have much fish in it.
Oh,
It's getting pretty low.
oh, is it really?
Yeah.
They
It's not
removed it?
getting anything coming in at all.
Oh.
And them 100-degree windy days, it just sucked that water right out of there. I drive down there once in a while.
Oh, well, my son went over there. I think he brought his fishing pole, but I don't even know if it's.
There's no
is it?
fish in
Oh, I
there.
told him I didn't think there was.
One of these times we're gonna coordinate riding together.
Oh, someday it'll be nice.
Yeah?
Right by you.
Yeah, well, one of these days we gotta be getting some rain.
Yeah, and it needs a lot of stuff flowing into it.
Mm-hmm.
We got everybody.
You know it's a dry year if there's nothing going in there. Isn't there always water kind of flowing?
Yeah, generally there is water that just fulfill like your house.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I got 7 o'clock. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to
Yeah.
order. Roll call, please, Tobias.
Here.
Yep. Here.
Here.
Here. Here.
Here. Need a motion to approve the posted agenda.
So moved. Second.
Second, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, motion carries. I need a motion to approve the meeting minutes from the, what's the date on that? March 27th, 2023. Minutes,
I approve.
okay, second.
Second.
Do you want to list, Tobias? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same, motion carries. We'll move into open comments. And we have the Crooks Community Child Care Center. Just starting the conversation about what a variance for the parking lot requirement could look like, and any other additional comments or questions you may have for us. So the floor is yours.
Okay, I guess, like Scott said, we're here to just kind of try to come to a consensus as to what you will allow us to do in terms of the parking for the building. There's two different, trains that are thought for the amount of parking that we need. One of them is looking at this building as kind of a business, which according to your parking regulations requires one parking spot for every 300 square feet of floor area, which means 27 parking spots. That's going to be very difficult to get on the site, plus the building and the playground. I guess within your ordinances, you also have parking for like an elementary school, which they require two parking spots per classroom, and then one for each office that you have, and then a couple of more for kitchen work. As far as, because they're typically, you're only going to have, you'll have a limited amount of staff, and there are people, kids aren't coming up, aren't coming to drive park there. So in that method, I calculated that there would be 14 parking spots. Whether it's 14 or 27, we are not able to get that on the site without encroaching into the front yard setback. And, option one of the site plans, we're showing, we're parked. We have our parking starting right on the property line, and then which makes it totally within the 25-foot setback. We are, we're not parking right up next to the sidewalk. We are almost 12 feet away from that, so there would be room to put fencing or a berm to kind of screen the parking from the street. The daycare has provided some information. I think Scott has looked over as far as, the parking rates or how much parking there will be during different times of the day. Particularly, I suppose, from the 7 o'clock, 6:37 till about 8:30, there'll be a pretty good steady stream of traffic. They'll really back up in here. Then it dies off, and it'll just be the staff. And I believe they'll have 5 or 6 staff on site during the course of the day. Their cars would be parked in the parking lot, and then at the end of the day, when the parents come back, they pick up their kids. That would, would get probably congested a little bit more. We've also we're also, I guess, as part of the site development, we have to maintain, we have to have stormwater retention. And we are showing on the first option 2 retention ponds on the west side of the site along Susan Avenue. And with the drainage piping has to come over to the west avenue. That's where the main drainage is for the site, and we're not going to be able to drain onto Susan. That would kind of potentially overwhelm Susan, and that would cause some intermittent flooding depending on how much water is being sent down the drains there. Again, this first option, we're totally parked within the front yard setback. On option number 2, we pulled back from what we're proposing over here is to, on the rear yard setback, the ordinances require that if you're in a business type occupancy, you have to have a 30-yard a 30-foot setback on your rear yard if it abuts any residential, which we do. So on the first option, we're staying outside of that 30-foot setback. And that's why we're closer to the park, that's why we're right on top of the property line on the east side. Option number two, we looked at, well, how about if we could reduce that rear yard setback to 20 feet, which would give us more green space up on the front end, to do some screening and things like that. And we're also showing stormwater retention ponds. We've got one on the east and west sides of the playground area, and then a small one in the front yard setback area. Again, where everything has to drain back to west Avenue and then into the ditch and then flows where it needs to, I guess. The problem we have is if we're going to be required to put in 27 parking spots, that would, we did kind of a quick study of pushing the building all the way over to West Avenue and putting the parking lot basically where the playground is, and you'll get a building and parking lot with virtually no playground. The playground area that you're required to have is 50 square feet per child, but they do give you allowances and daycare is looking to be has a license for 120 kids, which is about 6,000 square feet of playground if all 120 kids were out there at the same time. But they typically will give you they know that your kids aren't all going to be out there at once, so you only have to account for a certain, maybe I guess I don't know right offhand, but you don't have to account for all 120 of them, on the site outside at any one time. There might be 2 classrooms at a time, out on the playground, or it might just be an individual, and they're looking to have about each one of the classrooms is set up for about 20 to 25 kids. I guess that kind of outlines, I guess where we're at. I've had some conversations with Scott, trying to see where we go or how we get from point A to point B and kind of make everybody happy, so to speak, and as best we can, follow, the zoning ordinances so that we're not setting precedents that could come back to haunt you in the future or something like that. So I guess that's about all I guess I've got to say at this point. I guess if we'll open it up for any questions. This is Aaron Norman. He's a civil engineer on the project for us. He came up with the site layouts here, and he'll be able to answer any site type related questions. I can answer plan related questions.
Since our conversation, Aaron, did you have any additional contact with DGR on the drainage? You submit a plan to them for their review or anything?
Yeah, no question. We did look at the drainage. We've got about an acre site here, and about just under half of it's impervious, new rooftop and parking lots, about 44 acres. And doing our drainage analysis, we need about 3,000 cubic feet of storage on site somewhere in shape or fashion to not increase the water downstream, not make it, sending more water that doesn't go there today. Talking with DGR, they want us to point source all our drainage towards the east into the ditch, because I felt that had adequate capacity to handle this water and limit what we can send to. So it makes sense in my mind being out on site. As far as like a full design on the grading, yet we haven't done that yet. We're kind of waiting to see where the building ends up landing. It's got a couple lots.
Yeah, sure.
Building out there, so just once we get the footprint locked in, we'll certainly will work with your city engineers.
Yeah, it's kind of a unique situation. One, there's multiple variables. You have a commercial entity that's tucked within residential boundaries, which always complicates things because, part of our job here is to one, make sure we're not setting new precedent. And like you talked about, Keith, and then two, we need to protect adjacent homeowners' property values. So the buffering is important to us and, all the other drainage. Because when you talk about drainage, you certainly can't disrupt what the natural flow is right there. And with that being the contour that it is going to be complicated when you're going from a grass surface to collecting all that water on a parking lot, pushing it into the ditch. And then how do you collect that? So, I like the fact you're creative and put the detention pond in there. I mean, I don't know how much that's actually going to hold. That probably won't even really have anything standing in that. I mean, for the most part. So I was just trying to figure just the aesthetics of how that ends up looking in there when I'm considering the adjacent property owners. Two, the setbacks are important when it comes to commercial against residential, because as we decrease the setbacks, then we're infringing on that desired 30 feet that we want for a buffer. Not only the setback buffer, but also the fencing because even, 6-foot fencing up against neighbors is sometimes a little bit dramatic for them too, especially the amount of fencing that's going to be required around here. So, and I guess I maybe should have started that. Keith you and I talked today, and we 100% most certainly want to make every single effort we can to make this work. We, part of our comprehensive plan is to make every effort to get daycare, childcare providers in town, because that's a need for us. But on the same hand, even though it pulls at our heartstrings, when we make decisions here, and ultimately this is going to go on to the Board of Adjustments, which is the city council, whatever decision they make will have ramifications on anybody else that comes to this board and asks us for a similar or same thing. I've not had any sort of discussion. Jeff Nelson is you talked to Jeff. Jeff Nelson is our commercial building inspector. Classification in his world for building inspection matters. When you talk about a daycare or something commercial versus the requirement for building, all of that. I don't know what the difference between a school is and what you guys are doing, but I know that words matter, classification matters. And I guess if it's not an elementary school, it's a little bit hard because we basically would just have to say, well, we're going to call it an elementary school for the purpose of parking, but we know it's not an elementary school, and that's a little bit hard to swallow, I guess, when it probably more than likely falls underneath the service use, because you are providing a service to the community. So that being said, the requirement for parking matters, but we can get a little bit creative within that also and that's where the variance comes. And I tell everybody, I said, and I can't speak for the rest of the board, but I tell everybody, hey, if you feel like you have a need to submit a variance, thank goodness we live in the community, in the country that we do, where you're free to do that. You can petition your local boards, and then it goes on to, it goes from us, it goes to the city council, and then on to an appeals board even beyond there. So under no circumstance are we going to tell you guys not to put in a variance, and then you guys get to speak during the public hearing. And all the variance, all the logistics of the variance are in the ordinance, the new ordinance, and basically that tells you in order to qualify for a variance, these are the conditions that you have to meet. So I would just digest that as you move forward, looking at your the variance, because part of that piece is that. And it's like we talked earlier today, we have allowed variances for setbacks for garages in the older part of town when somebody didn't have a garage. So we felt that was a hardship that everybody should be able to have the ability to have some outdoor storage. So there's one instance where we have allowed for a variance for setbacks. This will be a little more unique because this will be the first time we've had to digest a variance for parking. Because if we put it in the use where I feel it probably in the conversations that I've had with some board members, where it fits the best is probably going to be under that service, and then it's 27. But if we want to lean more towards it being more of an education center, then it is 14. So it probably falls somewhere in one of those two. I just don't know all of the peripheral consequences if we call it a school, and if we go ahead and just allow the 14 and still call it a service industry. So, I mean, it's interesting. So I'm going to open it up to the board. just based on that, there's a couple more loose ends I want to tie up with you guys as you move forward. One is we kind of have to figure out the drainage. That's going to be, if the drainage doesn't work and it is too disruptive downstream, there's really not much use to have a conversation about a variance for the parking lot, period. Because we already know at the parking lot, even at 14, that's going to cause not some drainage issues. We just know that there's some issues to have a conversation about. So if you guys would connect with DGR, I talked to those guys today and let them know that you'd be contacting them, and you guys can hash that out. If I get a thumbs up from them, that's the same. That will be part of my recommendation to the Board of Adjustments, to the City Council for the variance. And then they'll say, okay, regardless of what happens with the drainage, we can make that work. You guys have a solid plan in place. That's not even part of you guys have to follow through with later. Zoning, it'll have to be zoned to general business, so we'll have to have a conversation about zoning. And then part of being in general business is also for daycares and general business, you have to fill out a conditional use application. Not a big deal. It's just where we sit down and have a conversation about when you, like this, we're talking about what requirements you guys have to meet in order to have that use within that zoning district. Need applications for. Another thing that needs to happen is we have to have a safe pathway for foot traffic from the walking path up to the daycare. So a sidewalk will have to be installed along. We don't want to use the parking lot, I guess, as the pathway for the kids to navigate from the main pathway to the daycare center. So however you guys want to fit that in there, it's just one thing that I saw. And then so the way I see it, there'll be a variance for a setback, probably regardless of which way you go, and then the variance for the required parking spot. So that will be the two things you guys will have to address in the end. So I'll open it up to the board. Yes, sir.
Could I bring up two
Yeah.
things?
Go ahead.
Before you.
Yes, sir.
I'm Mark Osbus.
Yeah.
Retired architect. I've been working with the daycare people for a couple of years now to try to figure out what they need, and this is the result of that. But my understanding of the way this works, and may want to expand on this, but we have a whole area set aside for drop-off pickup right in front of the building.
Yep.
And as a matter of fact, even stacking going back down into the driveway. So on a typical day, Noel, what would you see happening? Would parents come and park and walk in to get their kids, or would they typically drive up and allow them to jump in?
Well, I think we talked about having a drop, so, 2 or 3 parking spots right there in front. That, because most of the time a parent, it takes them, 10 minutes, and Melissa can, go into more detail on that, because she's there every day. But yeah, so, just seeing the traffic that we have now, knowing that it takes about, I don't know, about 10 minutes to get your kids in and get them settled, and then you're on your way. Under 5? Okay. All right. So, we have the flow of that. My name's Noelle All. I'm the treasurer of the board. I've been on the board for 17 years. Yes, I know, it's a very long time. Anybody would like to be the treasurer?
She was only 10 years old when she started.
Yeah, I was just doing the math.
I also want you guys to realize some of the other things that are happening behind the scenes. So we're here in front of you with this plan to try and find some way we can get this parking solution. I want you all to be aware of that we are waiting for a final signing from the state of South Dakota for a $400,000 grant. If for any reason we have to change the structure of this building and make it smaller, we have to go back through relicensing and reapproval from the state of South Dakota, and we'll lose the grant. So that means we're done. Yeah, so the bank is 100% behind us. We have Alliance Communication and South Dakota Grow. They're all willing for interstates to be first in line. We've done 3-year projections of cash flow to see if it can even work. That, in fact, when Melissa did it, and I read it over, I'm like, oh my goodness, we can make this happen. So I think one of the qualifications was a hardship, and that would be a huge, that would take us down, because we need that 400,000.
Well, and that's, just on a personal note, that's what makes it hard to sit up here, because we know, and
I've been in your shoes.
I've donated money to your guys' cause. I mean, when we moved here 12 years ago, we struggled to find daycare, so I mean, we are sympathetic, and unfortunately, sometimes we get put in a position where we got to make hard decisions. I think in the end, we'll be able to figure out. I mean, we're a bunch of smart people, and between us and the council and you guys, we'll be able to come up with a viable solution, whatever that may be.
Find that happy medium.
Yep.
Because I agree, we're in that gray area. We have a full preschool program that we use the curriculum from Tri-Valley and just scale it down for the younger kids.
Right.
So we have education. We are licensed by the state of South Dakota. All of our healthcare workers have to be screened and fingerprinted. They all have, how many hours of training?
10 hours.
10 hours of training they have to do every year for additional. They all have to be CPR certified every year.
Yep, every
other year.
Right.
Melissa has to hold a childcare degree or certificate in order to even be the day-to-day manager of the facility. We wouldn't be able to even open. We run a full food program through the state of South Dakota, so that offers low-income families 3 meals, get paid, okay? We also, since we are state licensed, we will take any child that stays in social, that's low income. We've had children that have been in foster care and they needed a place to go. If we've got room, we take them in, because we are. When people are deployed in the military actually has a program now. And Scott, you probably know more than I do. I just know that I've had to fill out documentations for that federal program,
right,
so we get reimbursed by the federal government.
Right.
So those are, yes. So like I said, we fall in that gray area.
So of these 14 parking spots, how many, like during the whole course of the day, how full would that be? Would you say?
So in the mornings, it will slowly, by 9 o'clock, it will be pretty full. So just like the daycare is now, the parents will just have to make you turn, come around and wait for a parking spot. I mean, they have to do it now, they're used to it. And then it would, by the time they all drop off, then we'd only have maybe 3/4 full with staff and cars.
Well, and we realize too that parking in hindsight comes at a premium. So that's why we kind of have the robust parking. We had to have a conversation with the school too, because part of it was with the school too. So you have the basic requirement, okay, you have X amount of offices, X amount of auditorium spaces. However, you also have Christmas programs, concerts, and I'm assuming it's, a wonderful thing for you guys to have Christmas concerts and stuff for your kids too. So what?
We have them here.
Okay, so you won't have any of them there? There's no plan that would happen.
No.
Okay.
Multi-purpose room will be used for school ages and everything, so we won't be able to use it.
And to be honest with you, we usually fill this community center when we have a Christmas program. So,
Right.
yeah.
Because another deal too, that drop-off zone, and we can have a quick conversation about that, and I'm gonna leave it at what it is, because also for retail service and trade establishment, there's also a requirement for 14 by 35 space too, for loading and unloading. I didn't even add that into your equation. So, I mean, I just figured that's the drop-off zone. We can consider that used for offloading of whatever needs to pull in there for your whatever, supplies. So, that's an additional requirement that I just kind of turn my eye to, but,
Scott, the other
Yes,
thing
sir.
I was gonna bring up is Aaron and civil engineers, when they create retention ponds, and you guys probably already know this, but, the water doesn't just fill up in those ponds and it all drains at the same time
Right.
into the ditch. It's controlled.
Yep.
Like a bathtub where it can come out, in a controlled fashion. So the ditch, that collects this water shouldn't, if it's controlled, it shouldn't be overwhelmed any more than it is now.
right. And I'm not concerned one bit about detention right there, because, we did it over here right out front along the path where there's detention there. The school had to do it too. So, that's, and over here we did it, it's not uncommon for us to do that. It's just the aesthetics of what that ends up being for the neighbors, because if you have water sitting there and then it sits there stale, what does that end up being like? So, that's part of my concern too, is I want to make sure that we're good neighbors to the good neighbors around there too. So, we did have a conversation about the relaxed requirement that we could do something different with the parking lot setback, but that really didn't really help after our conversation today either. Still doesn't get you there, but yeah. So
I realize it's a daycare and I know it's a quote unquote business, not for profit, but at the same time, it's kind of like we already talked about, the school and education. Just for the fact I've got 2 kids there right now. And my daughter, 6 years old, it would surprise me what she would come home and start rattling off when she was 1, 2 years old.
right.
Until she really starts talking good. To where I think the education is more sooner than what a person thinks. You probably get them through, start a organized program at 3, 4 years old. Is it 3? Well, at 2, they sound like they're not paying attention to those other kids and what the other kids are doing. Because she wanted to be a school ager so bad when she was 3 years old.
Like I said, I don't know what the additional building code stuff is. I know that anything commercial versus if we're gonna call it a school, what they had to do over here for the commercial build out part. Sprinklers under the state, under stuff, sprinklers above stuff, additional egress for fire. That's not our job here. I'm just gonna bring it up. Because how we,
The building will be fire sprinkled.
right?
So, we've got that. We do have, multiple ways out of the building to get you either coming back out the front, or you can exit through what would be the northwest classroom and then get out and then, egress out that way.
Right. And I don't know, and this is another conversation I had with Jeff Nelson. He didn't get a chance to get back to me before tonight, but there are certain circumstances for certain uses where you need more than one way out of a parking lot too. I don't know what that regulation is. I don't know if it's based on the use or if it's based on the amount of parking spots, classrooms, all of that, but I'm just saying the use can have some consequences to what you call it. So I'm just gonna throw it out there. I don't know if there's a requirement for schools. I know the schools had to have more than one driveway out of their parking lot for fire egress and stuff. I don't know how it would affect you guys. Just something to throw out there. We're not gonna make any sort of decision tonight. I'm gonna open it back up to the board again. I will say this, that there is some verbiage in our ordinance, and this is gonna end up with the Board of Adjustments anyway, with, the recommendation from us. In the end, they make final decisions on variances. But if we cannot figure out a way, like if we just say daycare is not in here, okay? I know daycare falls under the general business, but when it talks about parking lot requirements, it doesn't specifically say daycare. So what it does say, it says all other uses not specified above shall have minimum off-street parking and off-street loading spaces as determined by the city council. If we just want to leave it like that, we can continue to have our open discussion here with our comments, concerns. I will pass on our recommendation based on that, and I will put it on them. City council can make the decision.
I think 14 spots in front of there is more spots than what they have right now in front of the daycare that they currently have.
I have a question on that for you guys, probably. I'm noticing on site option 2 here, we've shrunk our distance here on the west side, but there seems like there's no difference in the front of the building between the lot, we have the same number of parking spots, the same measurements of 17, 7, 12, and 6 foot from the sidewalk. I'm just curious why we didn't have any more, we couldn't have parking spots right there instead of having a drop off, so.
We did, I guess, we pulled it back 14, 14 feet out of this, out of the front yard setback. 14 feet doesn't really gain us enough linear feet to add parking spaces. Your typical parking space is like 19 feet deep. And then if you want our drive lanes, you got two-way traffic, you got to be usually 24 feet between parking spots. If you have directional traffic, you can, and we kind of only have parking on one side, if you kind of narrow neck down that drive lane and in front of the building, there, a little bit, but, we would need to be, I guess, probably another, we'd have to be all the way over the property line in order to probably get any more parking, get another row of parking in off of where we're currently showing parking right now. Does that make sense?
Just curious, I just didn't understand why there was the same amount of parking spots. We moved the building, almost 15 feet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a way, this one, option 2 was a way to pull us more out of the setback so that we kind of get it farther off the street. And then it would allow us to put some of the stormwater retention, the smaller stormwater retention on right in front of it, there, and then be able to do a little more landscaping and screening as
Kind of followed by the detention ponds there. They're gonna be sloped like a 4-to-1 or 3-to-1, so we can grass them and maintain them, and they're meant to drain out. So days like today are usually like they're still be dry and mold.
Right.
Just to put it in context, I don't know if it's relevant or not, but I just looked up the City of Sioux Falls and zoning ordinance on daycare. They have a special provision there at off-street parking. Like I said, it's relevant or not, but they require 5 parking spaces plus 1 parking space for every 10 persons for which the facility is licensed.
And how many, what do you guys license for 120, you said?
License for 120.
11, 12. So it'd be in line with what Sioux Falls.
Yeah, you're still short, but you're close. Yeah, right.
It's like horseshoes.
There's no houses at South Susan, correct? On the west side?
No, just across the street. So I mean, that's quite a bit of a buffer there.
I have a question. You made a comment about rezoning. I was under, what do you?
I think it's residential now.
Pardon?
It's
No,
It did.
We rezoned it. We rezoned it when we
Okay.
purchased it almost 2 years ago.
Okay. Perfect.
Okay, you threw me for a
Perfect.
loop. I'm like,
Yeah, well,
something
it's,
now that I didn't know.
so that's something we gotta change on that zoning map too. It's marked not, yeah. Okay, cool. Perfect.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. I can hardly remember what I did last week.
I'm ready to
Yeah.
fall off.
No, that's good.
We don't want that.
You're good. We've been doing this for a while. So anything else from the board? And then I'm just gonna have one final recommendation of where we move with this. Anything else? Any more comments, questions, concerns? I guess,
Well, I
Yep,
guess I
go
can
ahead.
see where it is a learning facility. I got, is elementary education, and I worked in Montessori schools. And so it's definitely,
Yeah, should we change the name to Crooks Community Child Care Montessori?
that'd be great.
We have to
They learn
change
at their
all
own
our-
pace,
Yeah, we
but-
have to change all of our business papers and stuff. I'm sure Arlie would like that, but no.
Well, I guess to me, it's a huge, it is learning from the time they come there. They're everyday
They're
learning.
developing.
Yes. Yes. So.
okay, anything else? So I guess based on all things considered, what my recommendation to the council will be is that that we not consider an elementary school and that we not consider it service, and that they make the determination based on the information that you guys give them to determine the parking spots. I mean, it makes absolute sense what you guys say. And sometimes what we do here doesn't fit into what we do here, right? And sometimes that's okay. So based on that verbiage that was in here, that this board has the authority to basically leave it up to them to make the decision. So you guys will then go to them and have the same conversation with them. That being said, you probably, if you're going to do something different with your setbacks in order to make this happen, then your variance will be for the setbacks, but your variance would not be for the parking spaces, because you're, based on my recommendation, allowing them to make the determination for parking. Does that make sense? And we most certainly do appreciate all the work and what you guys do in your service, and it's great, so thank you. Anything else from anybody on this agenda item? Okay, all right, let's move on. We will open up the public hearing. Actually, I need a motion for that, don't I, Toby? Yeah, thank you. Everybody have their microphone on? Probably not. All right. Yeah, that makes sense, everybody? That'll just work better. Okay, we'll open the public hearing as of 7:38. Do I need a motion to, I don't need to open up with a motion, do I? Public hearing? I'm done on one. No. Yep, 7:38, public hearing. This will be for the adoption of the comprehensive plan 2023 to 2043, and Sean from CCOG is here to talk to us. Thanks for coming, appreciate it.
I'll give you guys a little bit of a rundown. The last time Crooks updated their comprehensive plan was in 2008, so it's been about 15 years. A decent amount of the document is going to remain the same. I've been looking for that since staff for the past couple months. And before there was some other people that here, so in general, the comprehensive plan is what its name sounds like. It's a plan. It's neither a law nor something that's like definite must be followed. It outlines what Crooks wants the community to look like over the next 5 years. The whole purpose of the comprehensive plan is to justify land use decisions, both with planning and zoning board, you guys, and then for city council. Whenever you guys make decisions, you have to point to something generally to say, this is why we make this decision. That's what the comprehensive plan is. So I'll go into some details about what some of the major changes were, and then answer any of your guys' questions. The first thing I kind of want to point out is the demographics. We updated the demographics to the information closest to the 2020 census. Every year they do what's called the American Community Survey. This is me explaining why we're using 2020 numbers instead of 2023. So in 2020, they did the census, which is a definite. The American Community Survey, which is done basically every year, is an estimate. Because of Crooks' population being around 1,000, around 1,300, 1,400, the percent of the margin of error for the community survey for any estimates off of the census amount is enough that it doesn't really make a difference. Meaning it could be significantly lower, it could be significantly higher, because they're using estimates that for planning purposes, we prefer the definite number for a smaller population so that we know for sure what it is, and then we can draw our own conclusions about where the population might go going forward. So as you look through chapter 2, that kind of explains why we're using
the 20 numbers. So you see 2019 or 2020, and you're thinking, why the heck are we using 2023? That's the reason why we're doing it. Generally, we update these every 5 years, so 2028. If we believe that there are significant changes or developments in growth, like for example, another giant neighborhood or something like that pops up, then that's when we'll come back, make an update, do new numbers, and kind of wait for the 2030 census to get that definite. So the population projections, Crooks from basically like, so I'm looking on page 5, because this is some of the interesting information. Crooks from 2000 to 2010 grew a very high percentage. It was one of the fastest growing communities in South Dakota from a percentage standpoint. It kind of pulled down from 2010 to 2020. It kind of matched what South Dakota trends were, but it was a little bit less. I believe, off the top of my head, Crooks was at maybe like a 7% growth, and the Iowa County was about 15% around the whole area. So you were a little bit less. South Dakota in general, I think, was like about 10%. So what we did is we kind of averaged out what, to get these estimates from 2030 and 2040, we kind of estimated the growth of South Dakota, some similar communities to Crooks, found a kind of percentage to say, hey, we're not anticipating another like 10 years of like 40 to 50% growth, because that's kind of abnormal. And then we came up with, in 2030, on a low estimate, we'd be looking at about 1,400, high estimate, about 1,600, and then 2040, 1,500 to 1,800. So that's what our projections are for the next 20 years. Let's talk about, so the rest of the information on those beginning chapters is kind of just, it's interesting, it helps you see the direction you're going. The two main maps that we'll want to look at are the current land use map and then the future land use map. The other ones are just some good information about parts of the area, wetlands, and other things like that. So figure 6 down is the current land use map. What we did is we drove around 6-7 months ago. If you saw some random guy with a giant board walking through the neighborhood, that was me in colored pencils. I was going around and basically marking down what the land use was for every single building in Crooks. What's important to note is that current land use is different than your guys' zoning map. Your guys' zoning map is what is currently zoned for that area. That's what you're intending it to be. Current land use is how it's currently being used. So if you rezone something commercial, but it's still being done as like a family house or a residence, single family, it would be classified under current land use as single family residential or just residential. But on the zoning map, it might be commercial or vice versa. If you have a commercial building that is still zoned commercial, but someone's using it differently, we would mark down what that current use actually is. So there might be, if you're looking between the two maps and you're like, wait, why is this one different than this one? It takes into consideration.
And that's what I had to rethink some of that too, because for the current use map, even though we had zoned it, if there wasn't a actual use occurrence on there, there's actually no building, nothing, it's not being used for its intended use that we designated it. It wasn't identified. So I had to kind of rethink that. So thanks for clarifying that.
And that part's very cool, especially with like some recent annexations and stuff like that. You might have some things like residential or commercial or industrial. But the way we do this for the current land use and future land use is we calculate acreages to see how much vacant land is available. So you can kind of figure out, well, this is the growth, we're going to need some housing, this is how much land's available. It kind of helps with that idea of what do we want for the future. So,
and that's what kind of got me with the daycare too, is that, and that's, I'd forgotten they had rezoned 2 years ago, and there's been no use on it for 2 years, so it wasn't identified on the map. So I just assumed that it wasn't.
And as soon as you said that, I pulled it right from the
Yeah.
It is on the zoning map.
Yeah, it's not on the use map, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So on the use one, it might be something different.
Yep.
So that might
Cool,
be too, when
perfect.
you're looking here, you're like, why is this white? It says that it's vacant, but
Yeah.
it's zoned differently. We're just saying, the way that we did it is if I walked around and there was no construction at all, and it was just grass, remarked it as vacant. So even if someone purchased the land and we know they're gonna be building a house, but they're just, for whatever reason, waiting 1 or 2 years to build, we still have that marked as vacant, even though they have the land purchased, we know that it's gonna be a house, just because that's how we calculate this area.
Right, and another comment on that too is that as I was going through it too, like this is only good as identified and as accurate as when you went out and did that and as of when you did that. Because they're actually, so we've gotten some buildings that are starting to pop up in light
Yeah,
industrial. You can't keep up with that stuff. So this document is a living document. It will change every day. I mean, really.
And that's the thing is each year we could, update the maps. That's something you can do by resolution, it would still have to be a public hearing, it would have to come in front of the zoning board, it would have to go in front of, city council. It's kind of onerous, but that's the thing is for cities like Crooks where you get that growth and it comes fast. I would suggest not updating the current land use for a bit, because otherwise, by the time I update it and start doing the resolution, like you just said, Scott, there's gonna be more and more and more.
I kind of have a plan and a thought, and the way we've done it in the past is as we close out developments, we have just small clusters, not small, I mean, there's just clusters of 60+ lots where it may be like a 5-year increment, then do the updates. Once the city takes over the streets, update the street plan, do all that stuff. And that's when we will continue, just as we close out developments, that's when we'll do the updates.
Exactly, and I think that goes in line with the company just in general. A lot of times you don't want to, you can do it every year. We suggest for communities the size of Crooks every 5 years, because that's generally when you're going to see, there's some way different developments, there's more people that are moving there. There are some towns like Spencer, South Dakota, with about 100 people.
Right.
Where we're like, we don't need to do it every 5 years, because I don't think there's been a new building there in 25, 30. So,
Right.
It all varies. Sioux Falls does it a lot more frequently just because they're expanding. So, yeah, 5 years is typically a good.
Perfect, great.
The map immediately after is the future land use map. So these are the land uses that you're looking to have in the future. Again, this is used for justification for you guys and for city council to determine whether or not you want to go through a change of zone, or to approve it. If you're looking at an area and you say, we intended this used to be industrial, this is what we want an industrial park, and someone says, I want to build a house there, you can look at the map and say, we were planning for this to be industrial. We do not believe that fits in our future plans to have that as residential, therefore we're going to deny the change of zone. Now again, things change. These future, yes.
Just, I guess, dumb question, because I know, isn't this land right here, just south of the driveway for the street for the school, already zoned for industrial or commercial?
It is, yeah, and multifamily.
Okay.
Yep.
Because I see on the map, to me, it looks like you got a zone as single family resident. Is that probably because there's nothing there?
This
I'm
here one
assuming.
right here is it. That's commercial.
But right there's the driveway.
Huh?
Right
Yeah,
there's the street,
You're talking this,
just south of the street there now.
so that's future, so current part, so this part here
Yeah.
should be,
Multifamily.
but are you talking current land or are you talking zoning?
For this future, like you land use.
So do you mind if I come up here again?
Yeah,
No,
go
yeah,
go
come on
ahead.
up.
Sorry.
So, because like right here's the community center, and right here's the street, that street right here.
Yeah, that's the school. Okay.
And right there, south of that street, that's commercial, and then that's,
Multifamily.
multifamily behind it.
Okay, and nothing has.
Nothing's there yet,
Nothing's there yet.
but
Okay.
that's what it's,
So that, yeah, we would probably want that to match there. Here, do you mind marking as best as you can, because I'm gonna have to do this for, which parts are which?
I guess I know, like, right here below, this off the street right here.
Huh?
Yeah,
Where's
so
this?
this part
That's the
is your
future.
commercial.
Commercial
That's
right there.
not the property, it's actually
Commercial right there, and then you
Yeah,
got
if you look at this
multifamily
map,
right here behind
right
it.
here.
Multifamily probably
Oh,
goes
yeah.
here, 'cause
I'm just
this is
like
the
on-
school.
If
Okay.
they don't
Footprint.
have it,
Yeah,
you
so
and this is
multifamily, and this is.
And then
Where that road
residential.
was.
I was gonna say, and then the school's order map, so this right here is.
Well,
That's residential.
That's all.
We do want the, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
probably.
we zoned it
is-
residential.
Well,
Okay.
that'd be
Yep.
Okay.
Diane's gotta be right there.
Because the school could be in
'cause that's
residential,
11th
assuming, right?
Street there.
Yeah.
And Diane's just on the other side of 11th Street.
Yeah, okay.
Pre-plotted already. Perfect, okay, yeah, I'll have us
Yeah.
go.
Residential's not marked out here. I thought-
Hey, Sean, one more thing too. On the
Mm.
current land use, well,
Okay.
see,
We've done this.
they're piecemealing these. They have, so this right here, this, we have an approved subdivision
Yeah, okay.
plan, but they are individually platting these as they go along. Do we,
Okay.
do we just leave that, or how do we?
What are they mostly doing?
It's all residential. Some, and the streets are fixed, the streets are in.
Okay, so it's all residential there, it's not like,
No, there's no multifamily, it's all
Zoned, but
residential.
it's not platted
okay,
No, they're gonna plat as they,
because they don't
Sell
want
the
to pay
lots.
taxes on it if
yeah, okay.
so that one's a little bit,
The one north of town?
no, this
And are you
one.
talking about the current land use?
Yep.
Okay,
So they have a website that the plan is on, but like I said, it's not platted, so I don't know if you want to put this on the, because at any time they can come in and amend that.
yeah, so I'd say on the current land use for that, I think it should be fine as is.
Leave it.
Because the whole thing about the current land use is it's mostly used to see what the inventory of the land is.
Yep.
So if plats are left off of it, that doesn't mean,
When we close it out, we'll put it in here.
yeah.
Yep.
Because and even then you probably.
Because then it's registered at the county, then it is what it is.
Yeah,
some
exactly.
of this green stuff here is actually housing too,
Okay.
you know. When they come up off of Willie Drive, right here, there's gonna be a road there with cul-de-sac.
Okay.
And then this over here, right along this edge by the pond is gonna have some, housing too. I mean, there's 60 lots in there.
But that's also not been platted yet.
We're talking about the future land use for that.
No, but it's been,
Oh.
well, on the, wasn't it?
Over here, they're
Is it on
platting as they go to.
City map that you approved though?
It's on the preliminary plan that they submitted
Preliminary.
was approved, but it's not platted with the county yet. So they're doing the same thing that these guys are doing.
Okay.
They're platting as they're going. And the thing is, there's some of that is supposed to be, according to them, it's supposed to be multifamily, but they can change that any given time.
Didn't they put their whole preliminary plat in for all their lots on this side?
On the preliminary plan, yes, but it's not platted with the county yet. They're platting as they go.
Yeah, I understand, they're
Yep.
not registering them.
Yep.
But their lots are all in.
So for those type of things, the best, like I said, current land use changes. The only time you're really looking at current land use for planning purposes is just to see what's available.
Right.
Future land use is the most important one.
Right.
So for those parcels, whenever they, subdivide and then they start doing it that way, I don't think we'll need to go back and do the current land use map on here. We just want to make sure that that gets updated on the zoning map
Correct.
for
Yep.
that type of thing. And then in 5 years, we can come back
Right.
and add all that type of stuff. Because again, the
Right.
problem is if we start doing that, you guys are gonna have to have this type of thing come up
Yep.
pretty frequently.
Yep.
Okay,
Perfect.
all right, so I wrote those things down. Do you guys see anything else on the future land use that you think needs to be adjusted? Because the future land use is probably the biggest centerpiece of the document.
North in the town, is that kind of, is either a lot of purple for industrial?
Yeah, so the purple coming into town too, there is a piece of that that's going to be single-family residential also. It's behind, it's south and west of that gray area where that event center is coming in. There's gonna be 24 residential lots out there. It's this portion.
So it kind of splits in between and then.
And this back here should be green. This is identified as, there's supposed to be a dedication. Once they get 50%, they will dedicate this area back in here. So basically from here to about there is gonna be the residential. And then from here, the sliver as it snakes to the back here is gonna be green park space,
I see.
natural resource conservation.
And then which, the outside area? Where the inside or
This
NRC.
inside area.
that one?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And that, it's not been dedicated, but it's been identified, so we just have to wait.
Okay.
But it can be identified on your piece. Yeah.
I was looking around, I'm like, where is it? Okay. All right. So the next important parts to address are going to be chapter 9, which is on page 27. That's the planning policy framework.
Yeah, I have one more question on future land use map, Sean, and this is, I was thinking about this in my office when I was going through this, is there's possibly in the green area out here in our most recent, there's a waterway that trickles through, and I know we'll get to the environmental, the waterway map, something to think about. There's a piece here that might not be viable, and there is an FAA tower that sits out in the middle out here that has an overlay on it as far as you can't develop within 1,000 to 1,500, whatever it is out there.
Yeah.
Is that something that we want to subtract out of, or do we just leave that green?
I just leave it green.
Leave it green,
Right.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, there'll be, I would keep it green right now. There's, we'll be updating them. This gets outside of this, but there's, with Crooks' recent annexations, they're going through, doing the new FEMA floodplain maps and stuff like that. So some of that's going to be addressed as we come to the floodplains, some little tiny sections touch Crooks, then it's going to do that type of stuff. So that will be done through zoning ordinances and municipal code.
Okay,
I think for here, I think it's just keep the NRC.
awesome.
It'll address those issues.
I think that was part of
Perfect.
one of the last meetings that was brought up about that waterway that
Yeah.
you were just talking about.
Yep.
So most of the planning policy and planning strategies remain the same from this comprehensive plan, and the last one. Most of it is kind of stuff that you would anticipate. Separating industrial uses from residential uses. Using buffer zones, just general things like that. Do you guys have any questions or comments on this portion?
No.
Like I said, most of the time we try not to make major changes to the planning strategies, unless, like, over the past 10 years, you guys have noticed something is not working with going right. If you find that there's something, you're constantly getting people coming up here and saying, like, there's nothing in here that says you can't do X, Y, Z. And you're kind of like, oh, how do you deal with that? That's normally when we go and change it. Just because anytime that policy's in, you run the risk of opening more interpretations.
Right.
So, like I said, most of the time we look at it, if it's not open, we haven't heard anything. The only other portion, and you can feel free to read it, I won't go into details, we updated the growth areas with information about sewer and wastewater requirements. That was pulled from basically the last Crooks facility plan, so it's a lot of engineering hoopla. So if you feel like going in and reading a summary of engineering reports, the biggest takeaway from it is on a lot of the areas that are just annexed in, south of town, before any developments in there, these are just doing some type of study to make sure that that the city has the infrastructure and everything else in place to provide services in those areas.
Yeah, and I think every plan that was mentioned in here is in motion. The water tower, we got the sewer district. So I mean, all that, you covered all those bases. So good job with that. Anybody else have anything from the board? Comments, questions? Spelling error. Can't find it. Okay. All right, so I will take a motion to, actually, we got to close the public meeting, right? Close the meeting at 8:02. And then I need a motion to approve the comprehensive plan as presented for 2023 to 2043.
So moved.
I have a second?
Yep.
Right, okay. As presented with corrections.
I rescind the motion. I move to accept the amended comprehensive plan with the corrections made.
Bill?
Oh.
I did.
Bill, second. Good, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same. Motion carries. Let's see here, number 6, no business, no new business, no old business. We will adjourn at 8:03.
God, I got a question.
Go ahead.
How tall can a 256-foot storage shed be? Our book says 1 story or 12 foot for a 200, and on a larger than 200, it just says 1 story.
Yeah, because we took the 15 out. It used to say 15, but almost every single 3-stall garage that we have here is higher than 15. So we didn't, when I talked to Bill about it, when we redid the zoning ordinance, we just left the height out because it varies on roof pitch and.
So there isn't one?
No, as long as it just can't be more than 1 story.
Okay.
We tried to, and actually I put roof pitch in there. I think on accessory buildings, the roof pitch can exceed a 612. Yep, so that kind of determines your height better than putting a height value on
Didn't Juan have to cut his down?
it. Yeah.
I know he had to cut the building down. I didn't know if I thought he cut the roof down. And then the other question is, the same guy wanted to know, why can't he have a wooden floor?
I don't have anything in my stuff. That's gotta be building code. Yeah, there's nothing in ours that determines the
But all
floor.
the ones they're bringing in, all got wood floors.
I don't have a problem with wood floor.
He asked me, I said, I didn't think there was a rule like that.
I don't know, I don't know if building code determines once it gets X amount that you need footings and
No, you
that's all
don't.
building code stuff. I have no idea.
Because even on 400, you can go on a slab, even on 8,
Yeah.
you can go 1,500 on a slab.
Yeah, I guess I
I don't know, it's that guy over 9th Street, he's friend with my kid, and he wants to put up a little shed, and
Yeah, I got no
I don't
problem.
know why he's bothering to go 50 foot over the 200 instead of
Me either.
going 300, you know?
Yeah, we'll go ahead and adjourn at 8:05. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Oh, motion to adjourn.
I'll make
So
a
moved.
motion.
Matt's got second. Got a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries 8:05.
He might have called you, I told him if to ask you about that guy,
Yeah, I had a conversation about a couple other things. Never brought the floor up though.